Hey everyone, welcome to the second installment of MK Partners Let's Build series. Last time we jammed on brainstorming for a new app or component and settled on field mapping, field snapping tool to help us tie fields together in relationships to make Tracy's job easier. Just a reminder, I'm Chris. I do marketing at MK Partners, and why don't we run down the board here and everyone just give a quick introduction.
I'm Tracy, Salesforce consultant.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a Salesforce developer here at MK Partners.
Hi there, I'm Luigi. I'm another Salesforce developer here at MK.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And we had Matt last week, but he is on a client call, which I think is a good glimpse at the way these things work. Obviously, clients take priority, and sometimes you get pulled out of a meeting to do some work for somebody, and we all just have to adapt and move around it. And Jacqueline, who was with us last week, also couldn't make it this week. So we will just move on, and hopefully they can join us again for episode 3. Let me go full screen here. And last week, just to recap, we ended up with this Trello board to help us manage the project. The items that were tagged in green, those are what we want for our minimum viable product. And I think the best structure for today is probably just to run through these, talk about progress that's been made, and plot our course for next week. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So first up, we had that we need an icon and we need a name. So I did a couple little mock-ups. Oh, there's our turtle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so last week we had talked about either calling it field mapper or field snapper. So I did a couple of our App Exchange mock-ups based on those names. Are we leaning one way or the other, guys? On
I'm Team Snapper all the way.
Okay, Team Snapper, 1 vote. I think I like that more too, because that makes the turtle make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm open to both, but maybe the other one with mapping hits keywords. I'm not sure. I guess we could. I'm not sure how much that plays into it.
Okay.
In terms of like, hey, if we want to hit that keyword mapping, like if you're doing this search, it might pop up. I know snapper might be less, like a less search term. But I do like the, like a field map snapper. I don't know.
Like you guys field snapper, that field mapper from MK Partners, like that. Like you put something all like, I know it's really long, but
yeah. And if we're definitely the SEO stuff and like making it clear for people that are on the App Exchange is important. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what we title it, I will be sure to hit a bunch of those keywords in the listing itself. Mm-hmm. So
right. So it's not just a title search. It's you can plug in the keywords as well.
Yeah, and I hadn't considered that, but that actually makes me lean a little bit more towards Snapper, just because field mapping is the functionality, field snapping is how it's going to operate, sort of. Right. But that way, when it comes to the copy, so here I have here's like one of our apps on the App Exchange. Here's a bunch of our apps. You can tell that like we have a consistent branding on the App Exchange, so that's why it looks the way it does when I whipped it up. But I think, if we go field snapper, then all of these bodies, when they talk about field mapping, won't seem as repetitive as if it was called field mapper. And it's like, it helps you map your fields, because then people who didn't know what that meant, or would just be like, you didn't explain it, you used the definition you used the word in its own definition. That's not fair.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then in terms of icons, I did one with arrows to try to show the relationship between data going back and forth, one with sort of a map and a path to suggest, what we're doing. And then one that's more of a glimpse of like how I kind of imagine the UI would look, where you have a bunch of fields and you're drawing lines to connect them.
I like that one.
You like that one?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's how I imagine it. So that's pretty cool.
I think this one. I like this one as well. I think the map one was a pretty cool like concept, but maybe less representative of the actual project, I guess.
Yeah, my concern with the map one was I wouldn't want somebody to use that as a visual cue and assume it has something to do with geographical maps.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Which I guess is probably another reason to say field snapper as opposed to field mapper, just because there's going to be a lot map apps.
Right.
I've had that problem before too, where somebody thinks it's like an ArcGIS thing, but in reality, it's not at all to do with that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So the only downside to a design like this is in the app itself, when the icon will appear in the bottom right corner next to our logo or whatever, it's got to be super small, so it gets down to, I think it's 40 by 40 pixels. So I will need to like take a look at this and potentially make some tweaks so that we don't lose all the detail once it's shrunk down. It doesn't turn into a blur. But yeah, I like this one a lot too. I feel like it makes it clear, at least to me, based on our discussions last week, what the tool would do and what to expect from the UI and everything.
I just have a question, or maybe a comment. So have we thought about like maybe adding alternating colors or something to the pills to kind of distinguish in between the different fields?
We haven't got there yet. It's a great topic for today to kind of go over my mock-up and then see like what we want to add to it. So that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I like that idea a lot. Even alternating colors or having them color coordinated once they're connected, so that you don't have to always follow the line across the screen. You look at the left-hand side and you're like, okay, my yellow matches my yellow over here, my red matches my red over here, and just give you more visual clues to make it clear at a glance what you've accomplished.
That's cool.
So I'm going to move icon needed and name needed into in progress. And let me add a little note on here to say field snapper is currently leading the votes. Maybe we'll put it to a company vote later, but I think I'm going to heavily suggest field snapper as the name. And this is just sort of a little glimpse of like how I use Trello and how we use Trello internally. Call that one that we all like, the UI graphic. And I'll probably whip up a Twitter poll today. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, head over to twitter.com/mkpartners. And in an hour or so, look for the poll and vote for the graphic that you liked the most.
I'm going to go in there and vote 1,000 times.
Yeah. Just keep creating new accounts.
Yeah, right.
All right. And then, Tracy, under which of these do your mockups appear?
On the drag and drop field relationship is a mockup. And then the ability to export data is another example.
Got it. Okay. And that's this JPEG here.
Mm-hmm. Pretty basic. I just did a quick mock-up of what we were talking about to give us a visual.
Okay, yeah. That looks cool.
Thank you.
And then, Tom or Luigi, from a developer standpoint, is it easier to do straight lines like this as opposed to curvy lines like this? Or is it equally difficult? And as a group, do we have a preference?
I mean, I think straight lines are always easier.
That's what I was assuming.
But I mean, I don't think that there's that much of a challenge in doing a curvy line. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think initially we'll probably go for the straight line. And looking at this here too, what we have on this mock-up here, looks like if we started getting too crazy with like the curvy lines, I know that we're probably going to be working with fields that have more than three. Objects that have more than 3 fields. And once we get to 10 plus and we start getting a little more artistic, it might start to become more confusing to follow rather than a direct line. But that's just my take on it. But definitely, from a dev standpoint, for MVP, probably straight line to start off, and then we can decide from there.
Okay. Yeah, that I assumed straight lines would be easier. I did the curvy lines because I thought they looked prettier and made it a little bit more visually interesting on the graphic. But yeah, for minimum viable product, I'd say straight lines then are awesome, and we can pretty it up later. So thank you for checking off that task there, Tracy. I'm going to go ahead and just add a note that straight lines for MVP, not really an activity, but there it is. And let's drop that in progress.
Any more questions that we have to go over for the devs to see like what needs to be done, or does that all make sense to you guys?
Making it bigger so everyone can see it. So it looks like the from objects and the to objects on opposite sides connected by the lines, record of who approved it and when, and then a button to save the mapping and a button to approve the mapping.
That's correct. The one thing I did forget to add is the cog. They get information about the fields. So there'd be like a cog next to each of those fields. I believe that how we discussed last week.
Like right here, next to each field, or
yeah,
on this side, I guess probably.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about the cog, the turtle cog in so we kind of talk about like how that's going to work, because I didn't make it to mock up.
Yeah, I think we might have said we're going to save the cog for. Oh no, there it is. It's on
I thought
MVP.
so too. But I went to check it. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize it was MVP, so that's why I didn't make it to the mock up.
Okay, and then save mapping would save it so that you don't have to redo it if you navigate away, and then approve mapping would send it into an approval process for the client.
Well, yeah, so the save mapping was what would export the document with all the fields for the metadata, and approve is just the request for the client that they have approved it. So our client will come in there and they click approve mapping, and then that's when they get approved by name and approved date gets populated.
Gotcha. Does that all seem doable from a dev perspective?
Yeah. So save mapping would send it off, and it would perform the mapping. Is that what happens there, Tracy? Or you're just saving in memory what they did? We're
just saving it into a metadata file like a spreadsheet of some sort that can get uploaded as metadata to Salesforce.
I see. Okay. And the approved mapping is more of a request for the client to check that the mappings are correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess that would have to send them some kind of notification or like email that they could then come and check the mappings that you've done. Is that?
We could definitely do that. Yeah, I think that's like the final idea. But I think for the MVP, you could just say we're going to tell the client to come check it out and give them a link to wherever they can see it, and then they click approve and they approved it.
I see. So then it will say, okay, that they looked at it, they approved it. Now we're going to go ahead and save it and push it to their org or whatnot.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Sounds good. Yeah. From that basic standpoint, yeah, I think that should be doable. Basically, what Tracy described.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions on this slide. You guys cool if we move on to the next thing?
Definitely.
All right. So I guess we'll do this one because it was the other one that you had a mock-up for, Tracy.
Yes.
The ability to export to a metadata file. And this should be a sample of that export. Okay, so this is what's produced when I click save on the previous screen.
Yes. So then from this gets uploaded to Salesforce as a custom metadata type. and then it can be used in the code to do the mapping portion.
Okay. And
Right.
then just
So Tracy, this is basically what the administrators were doing before, right? So this is kind of like how you would do it, and this is the reason for this tool, is to kind of give the user that visual UI to fill it out and then produce what they were previously plugging and playing in this format. Is that correct?
Well, it's similar. The way we have it right now is we have like a legacy table name and field, and then so I kind of just change it from object to object. So it's very similar. It's just kind of a cleaner way of using it for code. So I kind of organize it a little easier for the developer side of things.
Right.
If it's not, I mean, we could definitely, if it's more, if you wanted for, format, we could definitely change it that way. That was just my idea I had.
Oh yeah, so we would produce this metadata file, and then this would be used to then create the mappings in the org.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, this looks a lot more complicated than just dragging and dropping and connecting the fields.
Well, this is the back end, right? So you just see when you map a field, right? So you're going to map from object field to a to object field. That's where the line goes, but it just prints out like it just exports to having the name of the object in the field, and so it's not as more difficult. It's just a different formatting look. So maybe it is more difficult. I'm not thinking of it the right way.
No.
Luigi and Tom, what do you think? Okay.
No, yeah, this makes sense. It'll be easy. I was just saying, like, okay, so this is what we're going to output, and this is an example of what our metadata file is going to look. So we pull in what the mappings are, and we produce this outcome for you, and then send this off. I think that's very doable. So it's good to see this happen.
Where would we get the mapping name from? Where is that coming from? Column B.
The map, yeah. So basically, it's like the to object and the to field, like the labels of those two things. That's.
So is this you're saying this is generated from what we get?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so it's not coming from the metadata. We're generating them. Yeah,
exactly.
Then I agree.
We're generating the metadata. Yes.
So then this is multi-object. So on the first screen that we saw, the mock-up, it could be multiple objects and multiple fields. I'm saying from object to object.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I just added that in the sample. So I think you're right. To keep it really simple is just do one-to-one objects and not have. Yeah, I think so.
Got it. Because it changes the approach. Right? If we have multiple objects to multiple objects, then that gear is going to have to do some fancy stuff.
Yeah.
And how are they loading up the fields? Well, I mean, I'm examining the other scenarios because it could change. Even if we're doing something like MVP, it could change the way this, I think, develops.
You're right.
Right.
How you load? Sorry, go on, Tom.
Oh, no, I was going to emphasize, I think we definitely should do one-to-one first for starters, because I think it would definitely make it way more complex if we're doing multiple froms to object. Go ahead, Tracy.
So I was going to say the way they're loaded is through the API. So that's something that you have to figure out. But the way we were talking about it is, so you load the object from an API, the from and to object, and then it lists out all the fields that way from an API standpoint.
Right. So like my understanding is we have this is a field snapper, right? You have it in your org, and this on the app you'll have the option to select from all the objects in your org, maybe from like a drop down or something. You select, say, contacts or something, right? And then you select your to object, and your to object would be like account or whatever. And then you can then, by selecting on that drop down, we can then query and then populate all the fields on that object and display them. And that way, then the user just has to select the two objects from the drop downs. All the fields will be populated, and then they could just start drag and dropping and making their mappings. Is that kind of the idea there?
Yeah, that's as if we leave it as Salesforce to Salesforce, but this one is a little bit we want to kind of go even further. And the idea was the more use case is having like an external, like a legacy object from another system. And so using the API to load those up into the field snapper and map that to the Salesforce object.
Okay.
For the MVP, we definitely keep it Salesforce to Salesforce, but just as the use case for this tool, it's more valuable being an external object to a Salesforce object.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and definitely I can see that use case for it not being just Salesforce to Salesforce. But yeah, I agree with you. We'll start simple first, and then I think that adding that next step wouldn't be too difficult after we have our MVP polished and operating. So that's a good idea.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe the Salesforce to Salesforce one can go up on the App Exchange as a free component people can download, and then the one that's inter Salesforce and outside properties, maybe that one gets charged for or something. So we could do like tiers,
That's a smart idea.
Cool. Were there any other questions? I guess I have a question on this screen. This inactive checkbox,
sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna. I mean, I guess I should just ask what that's for, but I was going to ask if that's something that'll be populated based on selections here, or if that's something that's going to be updated by the admin once the metadata is created or something.
We can have a conversation about it. I thought like it's more of like if you have a mapping and then you go to update it and you turn off, like you want to disconnect a line. So you just have it if it was connected first and then you update it and you disconnect it, it would be inactive, would be checked in the metadata file.
Okay, so it's like a previously mapped connection that is no longer there, but that way you still have a record of what used to be in case you break something, you can revert it easily.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you go over it one more time?
Sure. Are you able to hear me okay? Because I know I had a little mic problem earlier. So is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you a little better.
Okay, great. So I want to make sure. So the inactive checkbox is used when you update a mapping. So you already created your mapping and there's already a file that exists. But I come back in, I want to unmap it. So if you like take the line away from the mapping, then it becomes inactive. That gets checked in this file.
So would this be done from this view that Chris is sharing, or would it be done from the export? Okay, so you would update the mapping by loading it into Field Snapper. And if you disconnect it, then it updates the checkbox to inactive.
That's correct.
So it could also, I mean, when you first load up the fields and the connections, if they're not connected, then it exports it as inactive. Got it. So if it has a connection, it's active. And if it doesn't have a connection, it's inactive. And it could be updated.
That's correct. Good job.
So this brings more context for me. So then this Field Snapper also loads existing field mappings.
It does, but I don't think for the MVP we're doing that. I'm not sure what that lies, but it's definitely a feature of the Field Snapper.
So we'll either have to parse like a CSV or something or an Excel and look into like another tool. Okay.
I think that would be ideal to have it load already existing mappings. It just seems to make sense. So maybe that's something that we could look into more, like, because Luigi, that would just take querying and then just seeing, okay, what is this field mapped to? And then, okay, it's mapped to this. And then have the lines already be there. I think it would make sense to try to include that in part of the MVP, just since I think, from my perspective at least, having the pre-existing show up would be more beneficial. But
would it be querying like records or actual files? I imagine this would be generating or reading a file, like parsing the file and then spitting out. So that's why if we're reading records, like if we have some sort of record that shows as an object to another object, like a join to, I don't know. But that would make sense too. We would just pull that. But I think it'd be easier to read from files and spit out files.
Mhm.
The
And then you
plan
can
was
have an
to have
option.
yeah.
Go
The
ahead.
plan was to have it as a Salesforce metadata file that was like MDL or something like that, right? So it's something that can be used, passed back and forth to like this to the app, and then also in the code you can just have it written right, reading from that file, right? The custom metadata file, and so that's what
Sure.
you're parse. So I don't know if you need a secondary file on top of that. Can you parse that file that we create the metadata file?
So this metadata file that you're talking about, what is this? Are you talking about like a native Salesforce, like a?
The custom metadata type. What is it called? Is that what it's called?
I'm not sure if I currently have the technical know-how to parse and spit out an MDL file and how to. Or are we talking about those XML files? Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
Creating
I know
an XML?
Matt has done something similar to this, so I think that he can help drive that. I'm gonna get the
Did I
exact
maybe
name for you.
mishear? I thought I heard like MDL. I don't know about MDL.
So I think he mentioned there was
MDT.
SDL.
No,
SDL, the data loader.
yeah.
No.
I'm talking about yes. There's
Oh.
that one, and also the MDT.
CSV?
It's MDT. The MDT
So
file.
.mdt and dot.
Mhm.
Got it. Okay, I think
Yeah.
I think we can do that. So okay, that makes more sense.
Also,
Yeah.
quick question, Tracy. Is the inactive, is that already is that what it's called in Salesforce already, or would it be like more appropriate to make it like name mapped? Like that way it's a little more like intuitive,
Sure.
like okay, this field is mapped, like check or check, uncheck.
Yeah.
I think inactive was a little confusing at first in terms of what that meant.
I agree with that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
This hasn't been created in Salesforce yet. It's just a mock-up
Right.
of what it could.
Right.
So we can
Exactly.
anything. We can change any field. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that way it would fit more like that. We definitely know we see that checkbox. With, okay, cool, that one's mapped.
Perfect.
Or how about snapped?
Oh yeah, snap.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
I'm going to try to add some of these things that we've come up with as tasks here, but also you guys feel free to jump in the Trello board and do that as well, because some of these you have a little bit better grasp on than I do, and also I'm just trying to not click back and forth on my screen too much and give people motion sickness.
All right. No, you're doing good.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's like, to me, like hearing the idea that like you might be able to load the existing mapping into Field Snapper and see how everything is connected seems super useful for situations with like employee turnover, or if your system was built and then the people that you hired to build it are no longer there. The ability to generate like an understanding of how things are connected seems like it would be super helpful too.
I
It's
agree.
proactive.
Right. And I think like the whole file thing that Tracy was mentioning, I know that as a dev team, we have some members that are pretty experienced with creating components that allow you to drag and drop files onto a spot, and then it starts to read it and parse it. So like that's like down the line future. It seems like we can do quite a bit with this app that we're building out. So that's pretty neat to think about.
Awesome. So we got that one moved to in progress. Let's see. Moving back down this Trello board, draw lines connecting fields. I guess these are going to be sort of more developer focused. So Tom and Luigi, I don't expect you've done any work on these yet, but let me know if I should move them to in progress, or if in the week we've had to think about things, you've come up with any, conflicts or things that you're like, well, I don't think that's going to work. And here's, just any updates in that regard.
So I think seeing Tracy's mock-up today, the one with the initial one with the 3 fields and the lines, that was good to see. And I think that this upcoming week, the dev team can go ahead and start building out just kind of like a sample drag and drop functionality with the lines being drawn between, just say like 2 test fields. So we're not actually building out the whole app, but just getting that functionality, and maybe we can demo that next week. That's something that we can do based now that we have Tracy's mock-up, her drawing. We'll go ahead and start working on like a a little demo for that and see if we can get that up and demoable by next week.
Okay, cool. I was going to see if I could add a task here for do a little test case with a couple fields.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and I guess I can add myself to that card.
If you add a checklist of tasks, then you can assign it to Tom, and it shows up in his calendar on the homepage of Trello.
Okay. Where is...
There, yeah. So you just go in. If you click on it, it says checklist, and then you just name it whatever you want. You name it task.
Got it. So we'll say like sample with a couple fields.
Yep. And then you can assign it and give it a due date even. I think you have to click add to, by the way, just so you know, to save.
Cool. I'm not going to put a due date on there, but Tom, if you need to give yourself a due date for personal motivation, feel free to do so. I always feel really guilty assigning due dates to people.
Oh, no worry. I'll have it ready for next week to demo and discuss.
Okay, cool. And then ability to export metadata file. And now that we have a sample of what that looks like, that'll be easier. Anything from a development standpoint that you think we need to reassess about this, or do you think we covered it all looking at the mock-up?
Sorry, I missed that real quick. Repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just saying, is there anything in terms of the ability to export to a metadata file that we might not have hit when we took a look at Tracy's mock-up that you want me to add to this card as a note?
Not on my end. I think as we start to play with it, we might get more questions, but I'm not sure if... I think Luigi covered most of the questions we had.
Okay, cool. And then this last one for our MVP here, the cog to see more details about a single field. So that's what we were talking about appearing right here next to the object, or next to the field under the object. So I think I realize why I had thought this was not MVP was I was thinking of the cog giving you more ability to manipulate information about those fields or manipulate the relationships that you're drawing. And this seems to me to read like it's just to show you more detail of that field itself. So maybe it's, the object that's under.
So your question is more of, should this be MVP?
Yeah, and or just like I just want to make sure we all have a shared understanding of what that cog would do. Because to me, cogs usually suggest altering settings.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like more information. I feel like more information I would usually use like a question mark. Like you hover over and it's or a little information tooltip eye.
Yeah.
So my understanding, I think we talked about it maybe last week with Matt. I think this gives the users another option. Instead of using drag and drop, they could click on this cog or edit or whatnot, and then they would have like a drop down with options to select that way. I think it was basically does the same functionality as drag and drop, but I guess giving users the option to like either do drag and drop or actually click on this and then go and like from a pick list select what field they want to map it to. So I think from that standpoint, it allows them to, and I think this one, like you mentioned, that including this in MVP might just be for that initial like drop down picking another mapping. But later on, I think we mentioned that we might want to get more complex with like formula fields and other things that exist in Salesforce. Those definitely aren't MVP, but they'll probably go in this cog.
So like extend the component or something. Okay.
Yeah, so like more flexibility. And I know we also discussed something about like default values for like fields and stuff.
Yeah, we did.
So like maybe you don't want to. I think that was a cog too, because I know we're only dealing with mappings on Tracy. But like if you wanted to say like, hey, this field should be this like default value, then this is where they could go and type that in. That seems pretty simple. So like that to include that option in MVP wouldn't require too much more work, I'm thinking. But Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so it's just sort of an alternative way for somebody to create these relationships if they don't like the drag and drop, or if they don't feel like doing it that way.
Right.
I do have like a question that this is non NBP related, and this is more of a general question across many different projects. When I'm using a new tool, I'm definitely a beginner, and a lot of the tools are abstract or sometimes have a lot of features. Like right now, Tom is discussing all the possible future features, like all the iSpot features. And I'm just wondering if we have any ideas for like onboarding, maybe onboarding or on-screen training, or sorts of little widgets that help the user understand how to use our tool, rather than reading through tedious documentation. Because I feel like nobody likes to go through volumes of documentation.
Right.
What are our feelings on that?
I think that's a great idea of having like, how you do like a screen capture, like when it's like a video of the screen going through with the steps. That'd be kind of cool, where you kind of just do a screen grab recording of like how you do each step, with maybe like a little information bubble during that step, so we can have both the visual and the text, because I think people learn different ways. So I think if hitting both things in one way, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and I do think that's like super important. Like every time you grab a new app or a new program, having something that sort of visually walks you through how to use it and what to expect the first time you land on a screen, just highlighting, these items on the left are your fields. These items on the right are the fields that you're going to be relating them to.
Right.
Right here to drag and drop. And that way, yeah, like Luigi said, you're not digging through documentation and reading all of the technical language. You just get to start playing right away. Because I'm definitely one of those people that learns better by doing and just trying a bunch of things and going like, oh, it didn't let me do that. Oh, they must want me to do it this way, as opposed to reading all the ways I'm supposed to do it and then trying to remember those while I execute.
Right.
Yeah.
I think.
Also,
go ahead,
Tom.
Luigi. I was thinking like, sorry.
No, you go.
All right, I'll go. Okay. And then I think in addition to the documentation and walkthrough stuff, I agree with Luigi that we should provide the user with as much, I guess, information or how to use this tool as possible. So I was thinking we could put those little info hover buttons that give a user more context of what this tool is doing. So also have built in addition to like documentation on the app itself. That's basically what I was going to suggest. Go ahead, Luigi.
No, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to touch on. I think you said everything that I was thinking. Thank you. And I think it's also more in line with just what Salesforce is pushing in terms of their declarative solutions, right? We have those flows, process builders, and workflow rules. I feel like it empowers admins to be able to just use a tool right away and feel like they are comfortable just using the tool. It makes them more likely to use the tool more often, rather than delegating the work or finding an alternative solution, just doing it manually or what have you.
Right. And I think we have, as a company, we have access to a lot of great admins. And once we build this tool, we could present it to them and say like, okay, go ahead and this is the tool we built. This is what it does. Test it out. And I think they could give us feedback like, hey, right off the bat, like, I'm not too sure what this does. Maybe we can make it like more intuitive. And I think like a good example was like when Tracy pulled up her mock, right? And we're just like, okay, inactive means what? So like if they come up with a question saying, hey, what does this do? Then they'll give us feedback like, hey, okay, maybe we need to put some more information there to make it, I guess, more intuitive for the user at first glance. So we could tweak it that way and get feedback.
That's a great idea. Because like we're building this in a box, literally, right? We're in a YouTube box here. But like, so putting it out and getting feedback, I think is really valuable.
Yeah. And that's that UAT part of the Agile methodology, right? We wouldn't be done if we didn't test.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I added a card for that onboarding or on-screen training. I marked it blue for MVP plus because I feel like it's one of those that it'll be hard to do before we have a minimum viable product, but I feel like it definitely should get priority over additional functionality. And, it's something that we can look at doing from a developer side, but if that's too tricky, it's definitely something that I can always whip up either with like GIFs in Photoshop or just video in, Premiere, and have something that like presents that your first time when you log in. That'll give you a 30-second run through of each screen you land on. So I feel like it won't necessarily take more development resources. We can just play with how we actually want to execute once the MVP is ready to go.
Yeah, we could always build a little helpful paperclip mock-up. I don't know.
Yeah, the
It looks
like
like
can
they're
help
trying to do
you.
a field
Oh
mapping.
yeah, the turtle can definitely help. Oh yay.
Now let's see this turtle.
Okay, well, the turtle is currently in progress. I'm
In
going to
progress. Okay.
I'm going to add our faces back to the screen here so we can see each other. But if you don't want to appear on screen, feel free to hide your camera. I'm just a little tired of only being the only one that can see all of us on my screen.
Yeah.
The turtle as he exists right now is just a head and what will be a shell. And I think I have to flatten out the bottom of his shell so we can give him some legs here. So
Oh yeah.
are turtles shaped like that or more?
They're a little rounder. It's like a surfboard.
I feel like turtles are flatter because turtles are more aquatic than tortoises. Are tortoises aquatic? I don't even know.
Maybe there are some aquatic tortoises. Let's see if I do that. It's got a little more of a shell vibe to it.
Oh yeah, it does.
I'll give him some little legs and stuff and draw that out. But yeah, very early days on the turtle. But I'll here, let me add a card for
Turtle design.
turtle mask. I mean, I really do like the idea of the turtle giving you the tooltips.
Just really
That-
slowly.
I just realized I was muted and I was talking.
Oh.
So I was just like, are we looking at the turtle from the top or from the side? And then once you progress, I was like, okay, from the side.
Yeah.
But as we have more ideas, say like through the weeks, as we're just thinking about this project and they come up, do we bring it up in the meeting or should we just go ahead and add it to the to-do card or how do we, I guess we could just add it in between and just talk about what we added at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think adding stuff to the Trello board is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But like, obviously if you need to communicate or have a question, we should be talking to each other.
Right. Because I think one idea that I thought about through the week was just I know just from working with these objects, one feature that I use a lot, and I'm sure Luigi and the admins do as well, is the search filter to isolate the object. I mean the field on that object that you're trying to target. And I think that would be something, not MVP, but maybe something that we should consider just because I know that this list can get long. And if we had some kind of filter option that allowed you to find the field that you want to map much quicker, I think that would be a great tool. Just because I know that I use that quite a bit in the Salesforce functionality. So
definitely every day, all day, almost.
Yeah.
So it's a great idea.
So I'll go ahead and add that to the card. That's just what I had. All right.
Yeah, I wish I could search by API name, unless I haven't learned how. Like
Yeah,
in the object manager.
That would be even better. That's I think that's one thing as devs that we have issues with, right? Luigi, it's like we always have to figure out what the name is, and sometimes the name changes and it's not the same as the API name, and it gets really confusing there. So maybe we can look into that. Yeah.
There's like 3 fields named the same.
Yeah.
Or similarly.
Yeah.
I haven't run into that. Is that?
Yeah, I try not to do that, but sometimes you can, like if you have like yesterday I had to make other fields for like a drop down, but it had to be 3 different kinds of others. So I didn't want to like call it. It's only showing up once. So I didn't want to call it like other 1, other 2, other 3. So I just kind of call it other. But the API name I had to say what that was, so I can see how that's a problem for you guys.
Well, just again, it's the kind of distinction, right? Or the differentiate. Our processes are different, so it just happens. I'm really liking this turtle.
I like this live logo building with Chris.
I
This
know.
is going really well.
Yeah, this is.
It looks like you need a cigar though. Somehow that turtle smoking a cigar with those eyebrows.
Well, so the
Wait,
way
what
that
eyebrows?
this eyebrow,
That
it's
sounds
just like
a little bad for marks.
it's just a function of like the way I draw in Illustrator, because you can draw, like, I know that's not what this call is for, but you can draw like rectangles and ellipses and shapes and stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
And you can like manually draw, like, you know, if I want to draw some curves and make my own shape, I can do that. But for some reason, the easiest way for me to do shapes is to start with like a base shape and then either add or cut away from it.
Oh, okay.
So like if I want to do a smile for this guy, I'll usually try to like start with the shape I want and then put another shape on top of it. And then I can use this tool to like subtract the item that's on top.
That's pretty
And
cool.
then we still have a little like left over there, but
That was a neat
was-
trick you did there. That was I was not expecting that.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, where are you going with this? That was pretty cool. You got me there.
but it's definitely one of those, like, I feel like growing up in art class or whatever, the teachers would always talk about like, oh, you have to like look at an object and then figure out how it's made up of all these shapes. So a head is just a circle, and then there's other circles, and a nose is a triangle, and then you start to like add and take away shapes. Illustrator makes it really easy to do that, but that's why I'm always like, here's a big circle, and then we'll cut off an ellipse down here, and here's a big oval, and we'll cut off part of it. So I'll keep working on this guy.
He went from screaming to smiling real quick. So I was like, whoa, his mouth is pretty big.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that like you have to, you know, like coding, you have to leave yourself some comments, because if you walk away from a drawing with a bunch of shapes that you planned to add to or trim away from, you can come back and just be absolutely lost. And I'd be like, I don't know what that is. It's just a series of circles. But
what was
yeah, it's so abstract. You can't even name the shapes either. Like what I do is I write these super long variable names and method names, so that at least if I come back to it later, I have more context along with comments. So that's crazy.
But like, so I can actually, so like now that this path exists, I can see that it's right here, and I can call that mouth, and call this one eye, and call this one.
Like all your variables, huh, Luigi?
Pupil.
Just track them
and
all.
then it becomes easy to like, you know, like we'll grab the eyes and the pupils and group them together so they all live on, like, then I just end up with drop downs, you know, that are like, here's the eyes, here's the head, here's the shell, and can work on each component separately instead of having to always have the whole turtle up there.
Wow. Well, there you are. You're a programmer, Chris. Awesome.
Yeah.
Why this is happening, I kind of thought about the export data for a minute. So if I can go back to that file real quick, if we're done with this part.
Yeah.
While we have few more minutes. So I was kind of thinking what Luigi was saying, things like that. I think it might be best to export it as the comma delimited file, and then from there, the next step is create a metadata file, having a choice between the two files. Because someone could also export that and use data loader to, you know, use manipulator or something like that. There's other uses of that mapping document to be used. So I don't know if you guys want to think about that. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Well, in terms of data loader, if I understand correctly, data loader has the columns.
Yes.
So the columns are first.
That was a bad example. Yeah, that was a bad example because we're doing the data.
Well, maybe file. if you have like some sort of option where it turns it into a template.
Yes.
And it only exports the columns, right? For either the receiver or the target, or the receiver or the other one. What's the other one called?
Field snapper?
The other one. So there's the one that you're sending to, and then there are ones that you're taking from.
Oh, got you. The to and from. Oh, okay, that's
the to and from. So
I like that.
it just sounds like
Yeah.
another feature.
Yeah.
Or it sounds like
Okay.
you could do it, but it sounds like another function
For
altogether.
sure,
Right.
for sure. Definitely. I just had that thought because I was like, oh, we don't want to kind of box ourselves in. It only can be used with
Right.
the field snapper. It might just be another opening, but it's definitely
Yeah,
another
I
feature.
think definitely once we have this thing working and we are able to collect the data on what the mappings are, basically anything that could use that information, we could work on coding out or developing whatever. We could make that data look like however it needs to look for any program. I guess once we decide like, oh, we wanted to do this, let's make it into this format, JSON, was SDL, whatnot. I
Right.
think that can all be done, like you mentioned, and this could be a full-fledged, like, multifaceted, like, tool for all these things. I think that's a great idea, Tracy.
I think we're overlooking one benefit to development is whenever we have bugs. I mean, every bug is a feature. So who's to say that we won't implement this on accident?
It's very, very
Yeah.
true.
Nobody knows the feature.
I feel like that's the point of bringing up possibilities like this in the development process, is because then if a bug happens to produce that effect, we get to say, well, that was planned. We talked about that. we were making, we were falling forward in our accidents as opposed to falling backwards. So it's good.
I've definitely seen those memes where they have it like a bug and then they play it off as like a feature.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen those, Luigi, where the guy like hits his like finger with the hammer and he starts like shaking it, and the guy gives him the guitar and he starts playing the guitar. And then,
I've
like,
seen
look,
those videos.
I'd
yeah,
love
yeah,
to do that though. You gotta
yeah.
link me to that.
Mhm.
Oh, improved guitar performance.
yeah.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, I think we made some good progress today. We have stuff to work on for next time. I think, since we're hitting close to the end of the hour, I'll give us, I figured I would wrap this up. But if anybody has any last minute thoughts or notes, I feel like now would be the time to voice them.
Got nothing.
No, I think it was a good session today. Thanks, Chris, for leading. And I'll have, we'll see if we can, as the devs, if we can have some stuff to be built out and demoable for you guys based on the mockups that you guys gave us today.
Yeah, I feel like even if you can't get like a sample something built where we're dragging and dropping fields, maybe just having an example of like what dragging and dropping looks like in Lightning Web Components, or what the lines look like graphically.
Right.
If those exist in other components we have or somewhere in Salesforce, those would be cool to see to help us
Okay.
visualize it.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I promise I'll have more of the turtle done before next time. And then maybe when we actually like finish and roll out, we could order little plush turtles to ship to, like, maybe we do a beta release and everyone gets a little turtle, and that way instead of rubber ducking with a rubber duck, we could have people rubber ducking with little turtles.
That would be
love
pretty
it.
interesting, huh? Salesforce has the animal theme going on,
Yeah.
and we don't have a mascot of our own, so maybe this turtle might turn into a thing.
Yeah, Salesforce has almost like, despite like they must have 30 animals at this point, but I feel like they really are underrepresented in like the aquatic region.
It's true.
There aren't a lot of Salesforce fish or whales or turtles or dolphins, so maybe that's our niche. We'll take over the water and let them have the
Nice.
land.
It's genius. Oh my God, mind blown. Can my turtle have a bill?
Can
Can my turtle have like a bill? Kind of look like a platypus thing almost.
Yeah, okay. I know snapping turtles kind of have like a beak, but
Yeah.
I feel like beaks are a little more scary. Yeah.
I think so.
See, I don't know how I'm gonna take to like rubber ducking with a knot duck. What's a knot duck called? What?
Turtle.
Yeah, it depends on what it is.
Exclamation duck.
Yeah. The following is not a duck. Cool. Well, thank you guys all for joining. It's really cool to see all this stuff come together and to like get to be in the meetings where stuff gets developed and see how these ideas work and see how requirements get, invented and then checked by reality and then grow from there again. So we will do this same time next week, Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Luigi. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right,
Stay safe,
thanks,
everybody.
Chris. See you later, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.